I think that one of the most important things you can do for yourself to set yourself up for success in whatever terms that means, right? Because nothing's going to be perfect, honestly, is really kind of amplifying your village. Seriously. There's so much unpredictability that I think one of the best skills that you can develop going into this transition, honestly, is not attaching yourself so tightly to a certain outcome and flexibility.
Everyone's getting their parenting advice from TikTok and Instagram, and they're
Yep.
always seeing the good. And it's a huge confirmation bias on, hey, this is how it is.
It's Instagram versus reality, right? So it's just being really kind of mindful of what you're consuming and how you're using it.
If you feel like you need to entertain them instead of being able to delegate with them, they don't belong there. They're not there
Yeah.
to help you.
Yeah. And this time I practiced a lot more boundaries around visiting hours and it made the world of a difference. It really did. I created visiting hours. This is when, this is a day when that's good. This is a time that's good. Self-compassion is huge. You don't look the way you want to look. That's a really big struggle for a lot of women postpartum. When you're pregnant, it's very cute. You have the baby in there, it's belly, it's bumped, and then postpartum, it's not the same.
Thanks for coming. You guys, welcome back to my podcast. My name is Dr. Mendal. I have Evelyn here, and she specializes specifically in the whole aspect of building a family, having new kids, and adjusting to that new situation. So I'm really lucky to have you on today, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
So let's go into that then. Just introduce
Mhm.
yourself and tell me exactly what you do and the scope of practice.
Okay, so as Mitch said, my name is Evelyn Mendal, and I'm a licensed mental health therapist. And I have a company called Hatch and Bloom, and it's really a parent resource service. And I do mainly one-on-one sessions with families, with parents who come to me with issues, concerns, fears they're having around something going on with their kids. I specifically focus mostly on the first 5 years, and that's really early childhood, but I've worked with parents that have kids of all ages. I also do webinars, I do trainings in preschools and for parents, for teachers. I do some corporate webinars. Like it's been really cool to also present to groups and parents that come in just proactively to learn more about child development and more about sort of their role in the first few years, which we know from science and research is very, very crucial in the development of your child's brain and their belief system.
I think that's so important for the kids' development to learn what's going on, but also for the parents. We have so many first-time parents, and they come in and they feel that they have this whole situation happening, and until that point, it's just them and their partner, and then their friends tell them everything's amazing and everything's going to be okay, and then they have a kid, and their whole priorities shift, and their family
Yeah.
structures shift, and there's a huge adjustment period to that. So
There's a
maybe we can
huge
go.
adjustment period. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think it's something that, 99% of people are prepared for, honestly. Like, I don't think even if you've read all the books and have done all the homework and have prepped yourself as much as you can, like, sure, that's definitely helpful, but I don't think anything measures up to the real, like, life shift that bringing a baby home, is really gonna create in your family and your lifestyle, just this whole idea and notion that you are responsible to really meet the needs of this baby in every way is a really big responsibility. And I just also think there are lots of things that kind of come to play in terms of if you're talking about partnerships here where um, there's just new roles and new division of labor and conversations and new, just everything's kind of different. So, yeah, I think a lot of the stuff comes up after kids come into the picture for sure.
For sure. And I think what you said, dealing with this prophylactically is so important, especially because remember, you're going into this in a situation that you're also very sleep deprived. So
Yeah,
once the baby is out, you're not at your best self. You're at your 30% of where you're at, and you always revert
yeah,
back to your training. So especially
yeah,
setting expectations for your partners and their partner's relationship with you, knowing that, hey, that might take a small back burner for the first, especially a few months. So
Yeah.
what advice would you give to a new parent? Let's say they're pregnant and when they're coming to you and they had the wisdom to prophylactically come talk to you.
I think that one of the most important things you can do for yourself to set yourself up for success in whatever terms that means, right? Because nothing's going to be perfect, honestly, is really kind of amplifying your village, seriously. And I mean this in every sense of the word. Like having a support system, whether it be your partner, whether it be family, whether it be friends, whether it be joining a community of moms, going to classes, going to mommy and me groups, but building this village, if you really think about actually the way that we used to parent way, 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 way back then, it actually was a village. That's why we could do it. That's why mothers could raise their kids in these ways that we now expect them to still continue raising. When we're hearing, all these uh, opinions and beliefs around breastfeeding for really long, and the recommendation is till age 2. That's a really long time for a mom, and for those that can do it, kudos, but for those that can't, it's a really long time for you to kind of set apart all these other parts of your life, right? Or the co-sleeping and not the parents that don't want to sleep train. All of these things were so much more accessible because we were raising our kids really in villages, meaning everyone around in the community in the neighborhood would take over. They would watch your kids and you would go do something else or go be with the other child. And like this doesn't really happen naturally anymore. So I think one of the biggest things you can do is set your support system up for success. Um, I have many things. I don't know how many you want me to go into.
No, I'm with you. And by the way, I have this
Okay.
conversation with every single patient that comes to my
Yeah.
office. And I tell them, listen, there's a huge shift. And like it or not, this is a price of feminism. It is so worth it. But know that
Yeah.
your grandmother who's telling you, hey, don't hire help. They had their aunt, they had their mom, they had the village
Yeah.
taking care of one kid, 5 people taking care of one kid versus you're alone, your partner's working. Now you need two incomes to just run your house and you're being told, hey, also raise this newborn without any maternity leave.
100%, 100%. It just doesn't match the reality in which we live in. So we kind of set ourselves up for failure when the expectations we have don't match the reality or the capacity we have, right? That's kind of another thing that I really tell new parents too is kind of take most of your expectations and throw them a little bit out the window because even now I'm running this group of postpartum moms, and most of them, when they even go through their birth stories, they don't most of the time match what they come in kind of envisioning. This is exactly how my birth plan is, and this is how my birth story is going to be. And something along the way kind of happens, right? And there's a detour, or something happens, or some of them end up in a C-section, or some of them go early, or there's many, many different versions of this. But basically, this is like kind of a sneak peek into parenting and children. There's so much unpredictability that I think one of the best skills that you can develop, going into this transition, honestly, is not attaching yourself so tightly to a certain outcome and flexibility. It's really being able to kind of constantly revisit and ask yourself, is this working? And I'm talking about everything, including nursing, right? I'm all for the benefits of nursing. For some families, this does not work. It's actually just producing so much stress on the mother. So the child's not eating what they need to eat. Like it doesn't work at some point, right? So it's maybe thinking, okay, this is the belief I had, or this was the expectation I had. I wanted this to work so badly. But at some point, the question that I always end up asking families that come to me is, does this work for everyone in your family? And if the answer is no, something's got to give. But when we're so attached to a certain outcome and we're so rigid in our expectations, then we don't allow ourselves to kind of shift and turn around and pivot when we need to. And the reality is our babies are unpredictable, and so just as life is, right? So letting go of control and flexibility is another huge recommendation I have.
Yeah, it's also everyone's getting their parenting advice from TikTok and Instagram, and they're only
Yes.
seeing the good, and it's a huge confirmation bias on, "Hey, this is how it is. Everyone has a water birth in their house, and the baby comes out.
Yeah.
Everyone has a happy family." They don't see them sweating, crying, all that stuff, and they're like, "Here's a beautiful family photo." So it's really
It's
important that I
very
think we're
true.
putting this
Mhm.
information out there to reach people.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on social media, and look, not all of them are bad. I do actually think that, for a lot of parents, the access to information has been awesome.
Mhm,
But you have to be very careful about who you're following and how much, you're taking that to heart because you're right. And it's this sort of like comparison that just by default starts to happen. It's this trap of, I'm not doing things according to the standard. If it looks like everyone else has got their shit together and for some reason,
mhm,
I don't. And you're right, it's highlight. They're highlights. They're highlights of people's lives. It's a moment in the day. You don't see the behind the scenes, meltdowns of these kids that it took to then get that perfect picture where they're all hugging each other and the siblings all love
mhm.
each other. Like that's really just it's a highlight or it's a moment or sometimes it's Instagram versus reality, right? So it's just being really kind of mindful of what you're consuming and how you're using it is what I would say.
Yeah, which is why we're making this content to, give a more complete
Mhm.
picture, which I really appreciate
Mhm.
you coming on with me.
Mhm.
On top of that, we talked about this first time mom, like currently pregnant, prophylactically coming in. We're going to give them, say, three pieces of information. We talked about building your tribe. What other few things would you
So
recommend
letting
them?
go of expectations is the other one.
Mhm.
And then I would really say I kind of want to add two more in there. One of them
To it.
would be trust your instincts because speaking again, going back to this world of information, age of information that we're living in, which again, blessing also
Mhm.
occur sometimes is just too much, right? Like there's too much noise. There's too many varying opinions. There's too many approaches. There's too many methods. And that can get so confusing and overwhelming for parents that want to get it right that we lose like at some point back again let's go back to like grandmothers and great grandmothers like this didn't exist like none of these kind of protocols existed and they were able to figure out how to, keep their babies alive and thriving. And there is this maternal intuition that happens. And sometimes we're just so consumed with the world and the noise and not just, I don't want to say only social media and things like that in the media, but also just the opinions of people that can get really overbearing for new parents. So, our parents, our in laws, our friends that are also kind of have had babies and they have different opinions on the way you're doing things or should be doing things that can just all get in the way of us losing our own voice. You really get to know your baby best and what works and what doesn't work. And I really believe in the strength of that. That's one of the things. The second thing would be, or the fourth would be,
Yes.
um, this too shall pass. And I know it's so cliche. I really do, but nothing lasts forever. And it's hard to see that when you're in the whirlwind of the sleeplessness and the pain and the isolation and I don't understand the differences between my baby's cries or the meltdown stage kind of starts and the tantrums, or I can't understand what they're communicating. Everything really does pass. Everything's a stage, it's not permanent. And if you kind of keep reminding yourself, I will get to a point where I sleep again. I will get to a point where I can go work out. I will get to a point where I will understand the differences between my baby's cries and what they need or what's upsetting them and making them fussy. Um, that's going to just help you get through like one more night.
That's so important to because you said a few things. We talked about consuming social media, but also your
Mhm.
friends and the people talking to you, they have different
Oh,
life
yeah.
situations and their kids are different. I have
Yeah.
2 kids. My second kid had some hip dysplasia. He would only breastfeed if my wife went on all fours and dangled the boob in the mouth. Would not feed
Wow.
in any other way. So, that is a
How did
specific
she even
challenge.
figure that out? Like, I don't even know how you figure that out. I mean, I
So
guess
for her, she was
being
looking
married
at
to
a
you.
different yeah, she was looking at different positions on how to, like, he had a
Oh,
clogged duct, and that was
latch.
one of
Yeah.
them. But he was special in that way. So that was a
Yeah.
specific challenge that we dealt with, but everyone may have a different challenge. Some kids sleep, some don't. My wife
Yeah.
likes to say, I don't know who she quotes when she says this, everyone who says their kid is quiet, they just haven't realized they haven't woken up yet. Because at some point there will be a challenge in each different way.
100%. And so I think just boundaries are also, if I'm gonna add a fifth thing, I'm gonna keep adding things. Boundaries, become really one of your new best friends as new parents. Like, boundaries with the people around you, with the opinions around you. You're gonna get a lot of unsolicited advice, that really you don't ask for it. That's number one. Number two, I'll make it something even much more simple. I remember I forgot to mention and introduce that I have two kids. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and then I have a 1.5-year-old daughter. So very different life
Mhm,
stages. But I could tell you that I've learned from experience between the two, and the way that I handled postpartum life drastically changed. So for my 9-year-old, there were visitors at my house at all freaking hours of the day, because it was just be like whoever my mom would invite and my mother-in-law would invite, and just at all points, there were everyone at my house, and
mhm,
it became that you're not just trying to, like, survive with this new little person in your home, but you're also now hosting people, and now you're not actually resting when the baby sleeps. And this time, I practiced a lot more boundaries around visiting hours, and it made the world of a difference. It really did. I created visiting hours. This is when this is a day when that's good. This is a time that's good. And also, like, having people come, your close people especially, not for you to entertain them, but actually to help you. So sometimes that might mean hold the baby while I go shower, or hold the baby while I go sleep, or can you bring a meal? Like, things that actually are going to help you, and not just come see the baby. So really knowing what you need and how to communicate those needs is going to be so helpful too. If you're not
mhm.
okay, your baby's not okay. Like, that's really, at the end of the day,
Thank you.
most of my work with parents. Yeah.
And that goes on from pregnancy. I tell
Yeah.
moms that all the time. They're like, "I only care about the baby." I'm like, "The baby's inside you. If you don't do okay, the baby's not gonna do okay."
Yeah.
And, going
Can I
off to
say
that
something?
yeah.
Can I say something here? Because I really appreciate that you're doing this, because I find there's such a mismatch between how taken care of we feel during pregnancy, and how not taken care of we feel in postpartum. And so
Mhm,
I'm so appreciative that you're doing this, and you're bringing out information like this, and you're doing, like, this is really important, because I really feel like at the end, especially at the end, you're just like going in every week, like, there's so much follow up. And then you
mhm.
have your baby, and it's like, see ya in 6 weeks, and then it's like, that's it. Yep.
It's also out of our field, it's out of our training, so
Yeah.
it's why, like, I'm trying to
It's nice to
make a
partner.
community.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what's needed. I know.
Mhm. So and also, by the way, this boundary conversation, I think that's a good conversation for everyone to have, and I think as people's time gets taken up, they need more boundaries, and nothing's gonna take your time away like having a kid. And you also said something about having people in your house. If you feel like you need to entertain them instead of being able to delegate with them, they don't belong there. They're not there
Yeah.
to help you.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't feel comfortable enough with your mother-in-law to say, "Hey, watch the baby while I shower," because 'cause you're scared how they're gonna react to you,
Yeah.
probably not worth it.
Yeah, I've heard horror stories around this kind of stuff, where people are
Mhm.
expecting certain meals and certain cleanliness, and, that, yeah, they're not supposed to be there if that's what they're doing.
For
So
sure, for
taking
sure.
care of yourself. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's another thing. How do you, like, going into self-care, what is
Mhm.
there something you recommend as far as self-care for moms, like, finding? Because there's still people, they just don't feel that way usually right
Yeah, oh
after.
my gosh, and it takes a while. Like, I think just kind of giving yourself grace, seriously, because I think you wanna so badly. And I'm glad we're having this conversation now, because I just went through this again, right?
Great.
Personally
Yeah,
too. So it's not just my word, but my own experience. We want to so badly just go back to feeling like ourselves. And that's not how it works. It really doesn't. It takes time. It takes a rhythm for you to kind of fall into. Self-compassion is huge. You don't look the way you want to look. That's a really big struggle for a lot of women postpartum. Um, when you're pregnant, it's very cute. You have the baby in there, it's the belly, it's the bump, and then postpartum, it's not the same.
Why am
So
I still 20 weeks pregnant? Why is my uterus still up here?
yeah, you really but it's not cute anymore, right? You're just like, what's happening? And I just like I don't feel good. I don't feel like myself. You're recovering, you're in pain sometimes. You're getting to know your new body. It really doesn't feel like your old body because it's not your old body. And I think just giving yourself a lot of compassion around this is going to take time and it's an adjustment. And within that, finding kind of pockets of things that feel like you again. So I had so much pajama time in those first few weeks, but then once in a while, I would like go get a manicure or would like get dressed. And it really does start to feel good. It feels like those little parts of myself that I had lost. For me personally, movement is probably my number one self care habit. So as soon as you get your okay from your doctor, being able to exercise, take walks, doing things like this, really, really help. And nutrition too. We kind of like don't eat or we forget or we don't have time. So finding again, this is why the village is so important, or having even just in advance, like meal prepping, but you have to eat well. And you getting the sleep you're getting. So at least the things you can control are your food intake, and you can control if you're moving, and you can control like basic needs pretty
Mhm.
much.
And that goes back to setting boundaries and delegating what you can, because you're gonna need
Mhm.
help. You may need someone to cook for you. You may need someone, and that's actually
Yeah.
a really good thing to when people make all these birth plans, that should be part of your birth plan. Who's gonna set this up
Yeah.
afterwards? Like, who's gonna arrange this so when we have a good plan so you can stay healthy? Because if you're not healthy, your baby's not healthy. I have to
Yeah.
sometimes, like, trick moms
So
into thinking
true.
about the baby by helping themselves.
It's really true. We don't need so many flowers. We need like actual like what are our meals going to be and who's coming to hold baby while I
Yep.
shower and things like that, right? Like we need to be more practical sometimes. So yeah, just getting back to little bits. I think also kind of small moments often is sometimes better than thinking of, oh, I get like 5 hours off in like a week and a half or whatever, right? But so
Mhm.
small little moments and asking for help. All those things are gonna just kind of help you readjust too.
Yeah, I just did an interview with a pelvic floor physical therapist on this because that's another part of this
Oh,
postpartum that is completely not talked about. And I'm saying that for a vaginal delivery and a C-section. So I feel like
mhm.
everyone on Instagram also think C-sections don't exist. But we talked about
Yeah.
movement
I
protocols,
I did
getting
it
people
this
moving.
time. I did pelvic floor therapy this time when I was pregnant, and it made a huge difference. But yes, getting back to yeah, so go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
Or going into this whole postpartum stuff, like through antepartum, postpartum, just also being able to keep a movement practice, but also
Mhm.
understanding the first 2 weeks after, you're going to need to relax. You're not going to be
Right,
able
like
to get up
knowing
and
your
run back and
body.
forth. You,
That's what I mean
we're
about giving yourself grace. Like you're not in the condition you were before, and it's again, that's one of those things again, nothing lasts forever. Like you are gonna get back to feeling more like yourself, but it's not overnight.
Mhm. And that,
It's a
it's
balance.
specifically those first few weeks that we're talking about. On top of that, your hormones are the highest in pregnancy and they plummet to the floor. So you literally are in menopause. So, and then there's a whole guilt period of sometimes because you have hard time taking care of your kid, the whole situation, all this changing. A lot of people feel guilt and get very depressed, which is a
Yeah.
whole aspect of where it just comes in and then you're supposed to ask for help and help your baby, but now you can't get out of bed because you go, "Why do I have these feelings?" And it's the most universal thing you can feel in the world. So I think the giving yourself grace that you're talking about is so important.
Yeah. And knowing when to ask for help because I really think there's no shame. It's not a weakness. Doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're not a good parent. If you can't figure it all out by yourself, you know, yeah, there's so much put on us, and like you're saying, there's so much going on in our own bodies, and hormones are whack, and our new sleep routine is terrible, and there's just so much happening at the same time that you're also getting to know this baby that you don't know. You really don't know them, right? Like they don't know you, you don't know them. You don't know how to soothe them or rock them in the right way yet. You don't sometimes you don't figure out the latch right away. There's so many so many question marks,
Mhm.
um, that it really is it takes a village. It really does. I
Well,
can't stress that enough. You couldn't.
but, no, 100%, and then just as soon as you figure it out, they change. As soon as you get to know them and you understand them, you get in a rhythm, it's like, "Surprise." Well,
All the
now I don't sleep
regressions.
3 hours. I don't sleep 3 hours anymore. It's every 2 hours, and I'm cluster feeding. What are you gonna do about that now?
Yeah, yeah, and that doesn't I don't know how, your listeners maybe have kids that are a little bit older too, but this
Mhm,
this is true for a very long time in many different
mhm,
ways, like, right so
mhm.
sometimes I have clients that I see sometimes for one-off things, they're like, "Oh, I just need help figuring out this one thing," and they've got it covered, and then a year later, 2 years later, few months later, it's something else because this is development, right? So development also means we're going through growth, and growth means like we're not the same anymore. So not being the same anymore means there's gonna be changes, and those are usually in kids reflected in things like their sleep, like their mood, like their eating, like their frustration and their tantrums when they're older. Like really there's lots of stuff happening all the time, and it doesn't mean that something's wrong. It just means your kids are growing and
Yeah,
figuring themselves out and developing.
yeah. Oh, that's great. From there, let's kinda also talk about, for example, I'm not naturally a paternalistic person. My wife is amazing. Thank God for her, seriously. Um, what do you do? How do you counsel parents that are having a little harder time connecting with their kids?
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the partner for a minute because this is also when we're talking about in the very beginning, something that tends to happen just naturally is the mother tends to do something called gatekeeping. And this is natural, but it's because they really want to kind of control the situation a bit and they know how they like things done or how it works best or how baby maybe responds to things best is that without it's often actually unintentionally, but they actually end up kind of pushing the partner away from doing the things with the baby. And the connection it's very, very natural for the connection to not be the same from the person who birthed the child and the person who's maybe nursing the child to the person who's not. Right. So the person who's not has to work much harder to actually feel that same connection, right? The woman is literally the for nursing our babies, we're literally getting oxytocin release from our baby's nursing. Like there really is a
Right.
chemical reaction that's happening there. So it's being able to actually, instead of exclude, it's including your partner in many more roles in the beginning. P.S. I just want to put this out there. Mothers very I don't know the statistics if very often or not, but they don't always connect to their babies right away. I also want to say that
Mhm.
is such a myth and misconception. And often moms think something's wrong with them if they don't feel like this, oh my God, like love at first sight. I'm so connected. This is my baby. And it takes work and time. And that's also very normal. So I want to destigmatize that misconception. So it takes time to get to know each other's rhythms. And this is the beauty of the attachment relationship is that it really kind of gets cultivated within the first entire year of your baby's life. It's not something that happens in a day. It's not something that happens in an hour. It's an overall relationship that happens in the first year of their life, continues then on. But the first year is very, very important in the tone we're kind of setting of responding to our baby's needs and understanding their communication and being attuned to them. But the partner has to have enough time with doing stuff with baby. It could be skin to skin, it could be playfulness, it could be reading stories, it could be bottle feeding. So we kind of have to let go because sometimes I actually think without knowing, mom tends to keep that partner um, from doing more with their baby. I see that sometimes just because they're doing it not as good,
Well, yes, we're never gonna do it as good, which is fine also, and
which
I
is
think
fine.
like you said too, it's for both moms and dads, both. People think just because we like to have sex as a species, we evolved to wanna have kids. We're evolved separately, like, completely separately. It's why you
That's a
see
really
those
good point.
African statues of, those big bellies of the mom, then, like, million years later or whatever it is, those big ones of the penis like this. It's because all those
Really?
millennia, they're like, where did the baby come from? There's actually some
Mm,
African tribes where the dad did not take care of the baby because they didn't make that connection. The brothers did. Because where
mhm,
did it come from? So like
mhm.
we didn't
And
evolve
and the
that way.
baby stage, it okay, that's such a good point, and I wanna also say that, like, not every stage is for every person. So, like, some people love the newborn stage and love the infant stage, and some people it's okay to say this. Some people don't like it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, now that we're past that, now that my kid's older, I like this so much more. I feel so much more connected to them. Like we have a relationship that feels very different." Some people feel the opposite. They're like, "No, I love the baby stage and now it feels harder." And the ebbs and flows
Mhm.
are so also normal. You don't have to feel like like everything is for you and everything comes naturally for you. And also it's okay to kind of delegate what you feel like the other person it's more natural for them and what they like better, right? So but if you do that, like, in order to keep your relationship with your child, like, you've gotta find ways to connect throughout. You don't have to be the one that plays pretending on the floor when they're older, like, this is I suck at pretend games, I really do. I, like, can't get into like, my daughter gives me, like, the most elaborate freaking roles that and I can't. She knows that. At this point, she says that I'm, like, the queen that gets to sit on her throne and do nothing because she knows I can't do that. But my way of connecting with her is gonna be like, we're watching a movie together, we're going for a walk, we're going for coffee,
Mhm.
like, it doesn't matter, you don't have to be good at all the things. You just have to know, like, where you can meet them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I'd also like to mention when you want to give your kids, as if you're thinking about being, hey, I need to do everything myself. Wouldn't it be better for your kids that your energy that you approach them with was better because you're doing things that you enjoyed with them and that they felt other positive energy from other people because they
Yeah.
liked doing those other things?
Yes,
It's
and
just
there's also a
personal tuning.
benefit. There's also a benefit to your kid having healthy attachments and relationships to more than one person. It is survival. We don't want to just depend on one person. Like we want to be able to have connection with multiple people and caregivers on our
Mhm.
lives because that's what's healthier, right? That's going to mean we're more okay. Same thing happens when you send them to school. They develop an attachment relationship with their teacher and they connect to them differently. So, yes, do what feels good for you, delegate what doesn't. At some point, there's stuff that no one wants to do, and you guys have to just kind of help each other out
Yeah.
there, right? But we also know, like you talked about paternal and maternal, and there's also like evolutionary. There's a difference between the way that moms play with their kids and the way that dads play with their kids, and there's different kinds of benefits that actually kids get from each. So, like, from mom, they're much more nurturing kind of benefits, and from dad, if you guessed it stereotypically, but really it's more of, like, risk-taking and roughhousing and this helps
Mhm.
develop their risk-taking skills and their it's a very different stimulation for them, still very beneficial in a different way. So, the different styles is actually a benefit for the kid.
Great. I know we're a little tight on time, so I wanted to also make sure we talk about a second kid or a growing family. Because my kids, for
Mhm.
example, they're 18 months apart. And actually, going back to what we said before, the 3 and 4, I'm just starting to feel connected to them, like I can play with
Yeah.
them and understand them. But when we had our first one, luckily, my daughter was pretty good about accepting my son Mauricio. But like originally, she'd go, baby
Like, go
swing.
back.
Like what? Because they're still a baby. Like how do you? And then they grow, and then now it's 1 plus 1 sometimes equals 11, not two
Ooh,
with the growing and family and
yeah.
delegating. So how do you deal with or coach them on the sibling?
This is a very loaded question.
Mhm,
I'm gonna do my
mhm.
best um, to give a little bit of tips on there. Okay, so do you want me to come in from the angle of, um, bringing a new sibling home or just sibling dynamics? Or give me a more specific because I have too much information here that I could give.
So let's give them the beginning. They're coming home and new baby because that's the first thing they're gonna encounter with a new baby.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so it really obviously depends first and foremost on the age of your existing child because not every child's gonna understand what a new sibling is at the same rate. So a 2-year-old is or an 18-month-old, which is very little, is not really gonna understand the concept of the permanency of this baby and what they actually mean, right? So One thing that you could do as you're transitioning to a growing family, if you really think about why a lot of the stress happens among siblings, is because they feel like the other child has produced a threat to them, and they're not wrong. It's not that the child is a direct threat to them. It's that the child is threatening their relationship with their parent because the parent is now less available. Does that make sense? So it
For
really
sure.
threatens the connection and the time that the older child already has with their parent. So in considering that, you want to do certain things like figuring out how to involve the older one, even when it comes to the baby stuff that you have to do, like feeding and like changing diapers. So if you can give them jobs, if you can tell them they're still welcome to read a book next to you while you're feeding the baby, you have to kind of figure out how to give them this role into the growing family rather than excluding them because now baby's here and you have to go away. That's what it feels like a lot of times for these babies. At the same time, some of them, what I hear very often is I don't actually get a lot of the calls from the new babies coming home. It's actually when that baby is now almost 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, and they're doing stuff. Okay.
Mhm.
Now this blob is no longer a blob and they're very cute and they're taking away attention in a very different way. And then when they're mobilizing, it's even worse, right? They're like
Mhm.
actually coming to
And
my territory.
yes, those baby, leashes start making sense to you when you start considering them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you really gotta kind of evolve this concept that I'm saying of really helping it's a balance between really protecting your older child's, like, territory and their place in the family, and not just having the little one kind of replace that, because by default, that's what tends to happen. Our attention kinda turns to the youngest, that they're the most needy, and the oldest kinda gets a little bit neglected in that way. So, giving them jobs, finding ways to include them, protecting your time with them, something I could not recommend more is preserving your one-on-one time. That is huge. No matter how many kids you have, that is huge. Nothing replaces one-on-one parent and child. I don't care if you alternate which parent with which child, but that time is so, so crucial for them because it really kind of fills what I'm telling you, that security of this I feel like this relationship is secure. Like, here's my parent and here, they're there for me and they love me and they're spending time with me and they wanna be with me. That doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be 2 hours. It can literally be 20 minutes. It can literally be 15 minutes, but it's a very intentional time where you're not on your phone, where you don't bring the other child, where you're not doing a million things. You really are 100% focused on your child and playing with them or doing something with them. This really kind of mitigates a lot of those issues.
Mhm. Oh, that's great. And then, as I get older, I don't know, it's funny now because now my kids are friends, but getting through that
Yeah,
first stage was harder, but now
it's
it's like
really
they're built-in
cute.
best friends.
It's their best friends, but they're gonna love each other and hate each other, and that's literally part
Mhm.
of them being close. That's the benefit is they're gonna be closer friends. The hard part is they're gonna be more competitive because they're so close together. So you're gonna see
Mhm.
both. You know, there's when you look at age gaps, there's benefits to bigger age gaps and there's benefits to the smaller ones. And the smaller ones is actually their closeness as they grow, but sometimes the bigger one. So if you think about mine's really big, right? I have
Yeah.
another
Mhm.
marriage in between. I have a divorce and a marriage and
Mhm.
a lot in between. It's a blended family, but my oldest is another mom to my baby. Like she's
Mhm.
this sister relationship is not like yours. Like they're a
Yeah.
very different dynamic. So it depends. Mhm.
Got it, but it
Really
seems like
cute though.
it doesn't really matter, the age difference. Like, I mean, it matters the way they interact. What matters is that everyone feels included and secure.
Yeah.
That way they develop like a very secure attachment style, so when they go into their other
Yeah.
relationships in the future, then, they
Yeah.
have that stability.
And sometimes you'll see the older one regress to more baby-like
Mhm.
behavior. And we don't want to shame our kids for doing that. That's really them calling out, like, I'm having a hard time and I need you in a different way and more. So they're reverting to like an earlier stage of development, and especially when they're seeing that the baby's getting so much love and attention for being a baby. Right. So it's like, I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna try that again. That's what they're saying.
I saw my daughter doing that. She'd climb up something just fine, and my son would have a little bit of issue, and she'd be like, "Oh, no, mommy, help me." And I'm
I'm gonna
like,
try
"Get
that
up
again.
there, I just let
Yeah.
you do it."
Yeah.
She's like,
But
"Okay."
if you look at, like, really my main thing is helping parents look beneath that surface level. That is
Mhm,
literally the whole point of what I do is like, "Okay, this is what we're seeing, but now we're gonna actually dig underneath and look at what is driving this behavior and what they're communicating or what they're going through." And that is like that's a chunk of the work that I do with parents. Because if you don't understand it from that perspective, you're just going to be like, this is so annoying. Like, you know how to climb, right?
mhm. That's true. I think everyone is in a little kind of tangent. Everyone can deal with pain if they know it's gonna end soon. Like, if they
Hmm.
know it's gonna end. So I think just taking that step back and be like, "Okay, it's a stage, and this is why it's
It
happening. We'll
is.
get through this," will help people, like, exhale a little bit.
Yeah, it is. Everything's a stage.
Perfect. Listen, if people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So you can reach out through either my website is hatchandbloom.co.com was taken. It's very
You
annoying.
gotta get that
Um,
back.
it's really annoying. It's like some Danish design company that doesn't answer. I don't know. So it's
Fair.
.co. My Instagram is another good way to reach me. I'm on there pretty often, and it's Hatch and Bloom Co. And or you can email me at Evelyn at
And I'll have
hatchandbloom.co.
all that listed.
Yep.
That go. I'll have that all listed below,
It
and
doesn't flow.
I'll make some short videos where I'll collaborate with you so they can see all of your stuff as well.
Awesome.
Great.
All
Thank you
right.
so
This is
much for
great.
coming
Thank you
on.
for having me.
Alrighty.
Sure.
Have a good one.
Nice talking to you. Bye.
Bye.